The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this third webinar in the series with Dr. Rozana Huq. Just a small introduction on my behalf. My name is Sophie Wager. I work for EFQM, Marketing and Communication. So just a few notes on how this is going to go. Some of you have been here before, but just a reminder so that you're all on mute by default, just to avoid any background noise and so on. We will also be allowing time at the end for question and answers. However, during the actual webinar, you can see, as you can see here, you can just type your questions. I will be keeping an eye on them during the webinar, and we'll be opening up the floor to questions at the very end of the webinar. We will also ask you just to fill in a very short survey just to allow us to continue to improve and to really bring the best that we can to all our participants. So that's it on my behalf. I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Rozana Huq for her presentation today.
Thank you, Sophie. Hello and welcome to everyone today who's listening in. My name is Rozana Huq. I am an organizational behaviorist and a specialist in leadership coaching. I help leaders create a culture of empowerment in their organizations. The theme of these webinars has been leadership and employee empowerment. It is about sharing knowledge with you, and EFQM has been very kind to give this platform to me to share this. And they've said, learn from expert, get inspired. And they present a series of 3 webinars around the theme of leadership and employee empowerment based on the framework of EFQM. So I did talk about innovation and creativity and talent retention in my last 2 webinars. This time I'm going to talk about leaders and employee empowerment and psychological empowerment. So thank you to EFQM once more, and I'm delighted to share with you my research. And it has made a notable contribution to knowledge in terms of leadership and employee empowerment. So we talk about employee empowerment. We read about employee empowerment. We never investigated what employee empowerment means until now. And my study and investigation of what employee empowerment means in theory and in practice have shed light on this matter. This has made a valuable contribution to knowledge with regards to experiences of employees. And the question I asked was, what is employee empowerment and what are the critical leadership skills needed? So on 12th of April, in the first webinar, I discussed what is employee empowerment and why is it important as an organizational strategy. In the next webinar, I discussed what are the critical leadership skills needed to support a culture of employee empowerment. Today is the 3rd webinar, and I want to shift to the importance of the individual as a leader and as an employee, the importance of understanding psychological empowerment and self-empowerment. Leaders and individuals both need to understand the importance of these 2 areas of psychological empowerment and self-empowerment to be able to actually introduce the culture of employee empowerment in the organization. And I shared this before. Why is employee empowerment important as an organizational strategy? So just to revisit this slide, it's about humanizing the workforce. And a lot of management people have said we need employee empowerment because we have dehumanized the workforce. And then my question is, how have we dehumanized the workforce? How did we get to where we are? So there's a lot of frustration, there's lack of motivation, the people are suffering from stress and job burnout. These are really complex issues at work. So the effective utilization of human resources is a strategic issue for organizations. And what I am saying is psychological empowerment can help individuals and organizations who are eager to introduce empowerment in their organization. So what is psychological empowerment? And it is known as PE also in some of the journals that are coming around discussing this issue of psychological empowerment. It is basically a set of positive psychological states that are necessary for individuals to feel a sense of control in relation to their work. And PE enhances locus of control, self-efficacy, and self-esteem. And I'll be talking around these issues. So psychological empowerment, in simple terms, is basically characterized by a sense of perceived control, a perception of competence, and an internalization of the goals and objectives of the organization. It sounds complex, but it really is easy to understand when we can just say that people want a sense of control at work. So bureaucracy actually destroys psychological empowerment, because in a bureaucratic organization, you have a hierarchical structure where positions are ranked by authority level in clear fashion from lower level to upper level. The authority structure is such that making of decisions is determined by one's position in the hierarchy in organizations. So higher ranking people have authority over those in lower ranking positions. But when we come to an employee empowerment organization who are keen to empower their employees, it is anti-bureaucratic. So here it's the opposite. Employees have freedom, flexibility, they feel valued, they feel respected, they have a certain dignity at work, and that enables them to give their best at work. And this is psychological empowerment, where people have positive feelings, where people feel that they can go about doing their work without fear and with a high level of confidence. So why are feelings so important? Feelings are important because we need to have positive feelings at work. It is necessary that work is meaningful to us. When work becomes meaningful, we have a sense of purpose. We feel a sense of control at work. This leads us to have a high locus of control, a high self-efficacy at work, a high self-esteem, and a high level of self-confidence. And there are lots of studies around. You can see on Google Scholar or ResearchGate or any of these journals that psychological empowerment is associated with positive outcomes at work. PE is beneficial to organizations and individuals. It helps to manage stress and avoid job burnout. It stimulates creativity and innovation. It helps to embrace change. It gives us great motivation at work and job satisfaction. So if we can get all of these things, I would say that psychological empowerment is now very important at work. It helps frontline staff, especially who interact with clients on a day-to-day basis. It gives staff self-confidence. It gives them confidence to take decisions, which is vital, and to take decisions at the right time. So in relation to employee empowerment, psychological empowerment is very important, which has been a largely neglected area. Organizations who have gone down the employee empowerment route always thought that you can just go in and say, well, we have employee empowerment culture in organizations, we have given you decision-making power, you can do this and that, but a lot of employees still said in my case study that did not feel empowered. So feeling empowered is important in an empowerment organization. And this feeling of empowered is called psychological empowerment. It is a feeling that makes you feel competent, it makes you feel self-confident, and your work becomes meaningful. I will take one example. So employee empowerment is about authority and freedom to make the necessary decisions. But the important thing is, without a culture that supports employee empowerment, it is also difficult to generate creative, innovative behaviors in people. So although you give people the decision-making power, and you want people to be creative and innovative as an organization, the organizations have to create the right environment to motivate people to have psychological empowerment. If leaders can create the culture that motivates people to have the correct psychological empowerment, then it is going to be a breakthrough for organizations, especially organizations who struggle to survive, who are struggling to be competitive. But here are two important things to remember. Even if employees have the authority to take decisions, employees need to feel capable of competently performing their tasks. They need to be confident to take decisions. And the other thing about this is, it's not just employees. Psychological empowerment also is an element of, for leaders, that they need to be psychologically empowered as well. So psychological empowerment has impact on leaders as well. Leaders need to have self-confidence, leaders need to believe in themselves, leaders need to have self-empowerment, a feeling that they can also do their jobs properly. And they need to be resilient. If they can incorporate all these behaviors, that will help them to lead in an organization which is psychologically empowered for themselves. So leaders need to create the environment for PE, not only for employees, but for themselves too. So for leaders, PE stimulates creativity, PE stimulates innovation, PE stimulates motivation. And on the issue of self-empowerment, if leaders understand that it is important to take self-care as well, that is, look after themselves on stress management, on their well-being, on their emotional well-being, physical and mental, and to understand how to be resilient, which will help them to avoid job burnout. PE is also important on bringing people in to have talent acquisition, talent retention, and valuing people. So organizations are always saying, how do we keep our talented people? How do we retain talent? And I think this is one of the areas, if they look at how their environment gives people psychological empowerment, they will be able to retain talent and be talent acquisition as well. So in other words, if we have PE in organizations, we can have humanizing the workforce, as I mentioned before. How do we reach to that stage where we have dehumanized the workforce? So PE can help in humanizing the workforce as well. If employees are allowed to take decisions, they feel they are trusted. And feeling of trust is vital in organizations. For example, a significant drawback in both of my organizations of the case studies revealed that a number of non-management employees still felt excluded from decision-making because they were not trusted. Employees need to feel that they are trusted to take decisions. This helps to lead to psychological empowerment in employees. So psychological empowerment is important for business startups, for entrepreneurs because they're risk takers, for organizations because they are risk takers. And so individuals working in this kind of organizations, in this kind of risk-taking environment, need to feel capable of competently performing tasks, of confidently taking decisions, and also feel that they are taking the right decisions at every step. And psychological empowerment can make them resilient. So the shift to individualism is about the importance of understanding psychological empowerment, how it can lead to self-empowerment. And on a question of leaders, leaders need to look after themselves. before they can look after anyone else. Hence, PE is absolutely crucial for leaders. 86% of experts believe the world is in the midst of a leadership crisis. I shared this before in one of my other webinars as well, that the World Economic Forum in 2015 wrote an article about this, that the crisis in leadership underscores global challenges. And an author called Bennis has also said, if I have learned anything from my research, it is this: the factor that empowers the workforce and ultimately determines which organizations succeed or fail is the leadership of those organizations. This crisis in leadership needs to be addressed by the world leaders. But a word of caution: leadership style needs to be favorable to employee empowerment. If organizations are going down the employee empowerment route, they need to recruit leaders, and it has to be the right match. So if organizations are serious about employee empowerment, they need to ask this important question: what kind of leaders do they need to recruit? So I want to share this with you about the fundamental concepts, which is an EFQM slide. And let's look at all of this. Sustaining outstanding results, adding value for customers, creating a sustainable future, developing organizational capability, harnessing creativity and innovation, leading with vision, inspiration and integrity, managing with agility, succeeding through the talent of people. All of these things are absolutely excellent principles for an organization. But all of these things need a leader who can understand employee empowerment and the importance of psychological empowerment. Hence, I think it is very important that we do pay attention to psychological empowerment. And to help us further, my model, Model C, which is a kaleidoscope of themes of employee empowerment, can be an enabling tool to attain psychological empowerment. So for example, the case studies of my organization through my findings have revealed that some of these elements are very important to people, to employees. So let's take these things one at a time. Access to information has been crucial. Everybody said in my case studies, unless we have access to information, we cannot take decisions. And if we cannot take decisions, we don't feel empowered. If we can take decisions, have access to information at the right time, we feel empowered. So a feeling of empowerment leads to psychological empowerment. So you can see how access to information is so important. Collaboration, all the 7 things are important. I'm just trying to break this up and explain. Collaboration is important because people feel left out. And it's not just employees, it's also stakeholders, it's also other business suppliers, it's the whole chain that organizations have this method of collaboration, and they need to introduce employees to this model of how to collaborate. And some of my case study and participants have said when they are invited to collaborate, they feel great, they feel empowered. But it's not only about waiting to be invited. Collaboration should be a natural thing. Each employee can decide when and where they need to collaborate to move the organization's goals and to achieve their mission. So if organizations give employees open invitation, not only that, but also that they can on their own collaborate, that helps them, employees, to feel empowered, and then you can achieve psychological empowerment. Enablement is also extremely important because leaders always need to understand how to enable employees to help achieve their organizational goals. And this is also one of the areas, if leaders consciously develop behavior to enable employees in supporting them in whatever way is important, resources, information, talking, open door policy, that helps employees to feel psychologically empowered. Power sharing is one of the areas where a lot of leaders struggled with. They were telling me they don't know how to do this, how to share power. But it's not just saying to people, look, I am sharing power with you. It's through all these other themes that they can actually show that they're sharing power. So one of the areas in power sharing is that people said to me that they want to feel that they can do their job through the other themes, and once these themes are all able, then power can be shared. Participative decision making is one of the other areas where people felt strongly psychologically empowered. And I've spoken about this in my last seminars, how decision making can enable people to feel empowered and psychologically empowered. Excuse me. The devolution of responsibility is also important, because if you invite people and say, yes, you can take decisions, but don't give them responsibility, don't give them authority, then they are again, in a sense, caged in a bureaucracy. They cannot come out of their bureaucratic environment and feel empowered. And finally, the people-oriented leadership style is the one style that all the employees in my case study said would be the most important kind of leadership style in an empowered organization. So when people ask me what kind of style leaders should adopt in an empowerment culture, it would be a people-oriented leadership style. A lot of this is explained further in my books, which I will also share with you. So Model C, a kaleidoscope of themes. Each and every theme is favorable to psychological empowerment. The people-oriented leadership style is important because unless organizations understand what kind of leaders should lead their organizations, what kind of leaders should they recruit, and this is one of the areas where a lot of information is not available because people don't know what kind of leadership style should one adopt. And so one of the things that is valuable from my findings in sharing knowledge is that people have always wanted in my case studies a people-oriented leadership style, which means that leaders care for their peoples, they put people first, they value people's respect and dignity. And all these things can be achieved through the kaleidoscope of Huq's Model C. The positive psychological implications, the internal locus of control, self-efficacy and self-esteem is also explained in my book, and it combines Model C with the other models, A, B as well. So the future of leadership is a key consideration. This is a question, and we all need to think about this seriously. If pace and methods of work are changing, how will leaders lead? How will they change? They need to embrace change as well, not just employees. So the future of leadership, the way forward is empowering people. So my question is, why wait for tomorrow? Empower your mind, start thinking today. Take the empowerment journey. And so a little bit further information on specifically for leaders. Leaders in empowered organization need to be specialist leaders, not generalist leaders, in the sense you're not just leading a team, you're not just leading an organization, you need to have certain special skills to lead in an empowered organization. So if the organization is saying that we want to implement employee empowerment, we want to empower our employees, then that organizations need specialist leaders. Specialist leadership skills needed in organizations who want to empower their employees. Leaders need to learn, educate themselves, develop and achieve the skills I have highlighted, in order to enable them to create conditions that empower employees. Creating the conditions is not difficult or complex. It just needs a strategy, it needs a model. And my model can help in enabling leaders to create that environment and culture. Creating the right condition for empowerment enables employees to accomplish tasks. And that's what organizations want, don't they want employees to accomplish tasks? So creating the right conditions for empowerment can enable employees to accomplish tasks and develop their individual talent and competence. This makes sense because this adds value to organizations. It also helps leaders to be psychologically empowered. So the psychological empowerment is explained further in chapter 6 of my book. And the important thing is when your employees can say, yes, I can do, when they have an approach, oh, yes, I can, then there is a sense of psychological empowerment in that organization. But it does not happen overnight. The critical leadership skills that are needed to support a culture of employee empowerment cannot happen overnight. The art of developing these skills is in the expertise. If you would like to know the how-to, the all-important know-how, then please get in touch by using the contact form on www.rozanahuq.com. The shift to individualism as a leader is important because if leaders do not understand how to introduce psychological empowerment in their organizations, then they're missing out on a lot of talent development. So just to share with you that a very known scholar in the university here have said, this book makes a helpful contribution to employee empowerment in relation to organizational improvement. And the thing I want to, this is his review, but where I want to bring your attention is the psychology which gives a much needed new perspective on employee empowerment. Because we have heard about employee empowerment before in journals, articles, there are lots of books, but the added value that I bring from my doctorate studies is the psychology of employee empowerment, which gives a new perspective, a different way of looking at things, a different way of embracing change, a different way of introducing employee empowerment. So I will say thank you now, and if you have any questions, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Rozana. Sorry, there we go. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them now. The Q&A is now open. So no questions so far, but just a comment from Eric Person saying very good and thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
So here we have a question. Does psychology contain only employee or also leaders' psychology?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's what I've been saying in my presentation, that leaders need to understand psychological empowerment as well, because that is important. If they don't have psychological empowerment, they cannot expect others to have psychological empowerment, because as an individual, everybody needs to have this. So the shift to individualism is about the leaders looking at themselves as an individual and looking at themselves as the importance of understanding psychological empowerment and self-empowerment, because leaders are individuals as well. If they don't feel confident, if they don't have the psychological empowerment, then they cannot really support their people.
Great, thank you. Next question. Are there any good examples of an organization which has successfully introduced employee empowerment? If so, what did they do to achieve this?
Yes, I would actually love to know an organization who has successfully introduced employee empowerment. In fact, if you can share any organization that you know has done this, I would be very grateful. The case studies in my organizations thought that they had introduced employee empowerment successfully, but the results showed that there were lots of gaps. Of course, it is, no one is going to be successful overnight, but to have 100% employee empowerment, my questions would still stand as my presentation did. Do employees have psychological empowerment? There should be a survey which asks employees, how much confident do you feel in taking decisions? How much self-esteem do you feel when you walk into the organizations? How much self-efficacy and self-control do you have? If these questions can be asked in an honest manner, if employees can answer them, then we know that there is a positive psychological empowerment in this organization, combined with employee empowerment, the strategic employee empowerment that organizations have in this organization. Combine that with the answers of this survey of psychological empowerment, then you can analyze both of these and come to an understanding whether it is a successful psychological empowerment in this organization. But on this note, I will also tell you that when you walk into an organization, you can feel whether employees feel psychologically empowered, because it is in their service, it is in their interaction as a customer or a service provider, you will feel whether these organizations have employees who can confidently do their job and give a good service.
Great, thank you. Next, the studies you refer to, are they perception-based, i.e. what employees state, or are they based on actual performance measures? If they're based on performance measures, can you elaborate?
Yes, they are based on performance measures. I can send you, if this person is interested, reference in an article on this, and this is Spreitzer, S-P-R-E-I-T-Z-E-R, and they have developed an instrument where you can actually ask employees questions on the meaningful at work, the competency at work, and there are a few other things that this instrument can be used as well. So anyone interested in that side of things, there are lots of studies now who actually have tried to measure psychological empowerment, and there is a few references in my book. And anyone interested, I can forward these to Sophie.
Great, thank you. Yeah, don't hesitate if you're interested in that. Just send us an email and we'll put that together for you. How do you persuade current leaders in hierarchical structures to introduce employee empowerment, as this may look to the leaders like they are giving up their power?
Yes, and that is such a topic, and I would love to take a workshop on this, trying to explain to leaders that they need not feel what they felt. In my case studies, the people and the higher senior officers, the chief executive felt this is where they struggle most to kind of share power. But the question I would put to these leaders is, what is their understanding of sharing power? What do they mean when they say, I don't like sharing power, or how do I share power? This is very much a procession that we have to get into the minds of these leaders and first understand what they assume to be power sharing. And power sharing is not just, as I've said time and time again, and I still do in my lectures at the university and in the workshops, that power sharing doesn't mean, you give up your seat or you give up something, give away something necessarily. Power sharing is about sharing. So when you share something, it doesn't mean you have to give up. You're just extending more. So you are actually gathering more followers when you power share, and you're actually gathering more people to buy into your idea of your vision or a mission. If you're a leader of an organization in the hierarchy, topmost position, then obviously you have a strategic mission and a vision to take your organization somewhere, let's say from A to B. In doing that, you have employed certain people in your organization. What are these people doing in your organization to take you from A to B? What are you doing for these people to enable you to take your organization from A to B? So power sharing doesn't mean that you are giving. What are you giving away? What is your conception of power? This is the first question leaders need to question themselves. And then if you look, and that's why I've developed these models, and these are going to be extremely important business tools if a corporate wants to be interested, and I can explain to them more. Anyone interested in this, please get in touch with me. It is a complimentary session that I'm providing because I want to share knowledge. I want to make people understand what they think power sharing is may not necessarily be that formidable kind of power sharing where you think you are going to give everything away and end up with nothing. It is the other way around. When you give up power sharing according to my tool, my themes, then you're not actually giving away, you're sharing. When you share, you have more because people are going to give you part of their power. Don't forget, every employee in that organization, right down to the cleaner in that organization, the lower ranking people have power. Everybody has power as an employee. And if they share their power, and if leaders share their power, organization can, in terms of developing their vision and achieving their mission. And that's what does an organization do? It is to achieve their vision and mission, to deliver excellence to their customers. And only you can do this if everybody is combining their full power. So that means the organization is running on full power. Power of employees, power of leaders combined together. But the problem is leaders hoard their power. They don't share because they think, look back to my model, model C. Access to information, if you share, you're sharing your power because all you did was you hoarded that information as a leader and you didn't share anything on information. So just taking one theme out of the 7 themes has already made you powerful, not powerless. If you share less, then you as a leader become more powerless. I don't know if this is making sense, but anyone interested in this area of power sharing, please get in touch and you can receive a complimentary workshop and a dialogue on this. You as a leader, as the topmost chief executive officer, need not be afraid to share power because in sharing, you're getting more power in your organization, as the organization and as a leader as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Another question. So is there any measurement method for understanding the psychological level of a leader or employee?
Yes, there is. Again, I will, if you are keen, if you send an email to Sophie, and Sophie, I'm sure you will not mind sending me that email, and I will send you some references because these references are useful for people who are interested. It's no good just giving out these references and making the presentation more complicated. If you're interested in that, there are certain measurements, and there are new researches from pre-2010. It was very difficult to get any journal, any research on employee psychological empowerment. But since 2010, And since also my research has been revealed, there has been a lot of interest in this area, and a lot of people, especially in the banking sector, in the hospitality sector, have now come to understand the importance of PE. And so there is still not a huge amount, but there are a few studies which have introduced instruments on how you can measure psychological empowerment. And it is really very interesting because unless people feel, if you destroy people's self-esteem and self-efficacy at work, then actually you're destroying talent at work. If you destroy, a leader can also have his self-esteem and self-efficacy destroyed. You know, they are not always psychologically empowered in the top position all the time. Things happen to them as well, and sometimes they feel very low in their self-esteem. So yes, there are instruments available now that can measure this.
Super great. No more questions at the moment. We can give it a few more minutes. There's a couple of notes, but I've made note of everything, and I'll pass everything on to Dr. Huq, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Our email address, you can send any questions or comments to info@efqm.org, and we'll get back to you, or we will transfer this to Dr. Huq, and we'll get back to you either way. So there's no more questions at the moment. Don't hesitate if something comes up. Again, if you think of anything, even in the next half an hour, please don't hesitate to send us an email, and we'll be gladly get back to you on whatever subject you have a question about. Someone is asking, which university are you based at?
I'm based at Queen's University in Belfast, which is in UK.
Thank you.
And on, sorry, Sophie, on that note, I do guest lecturing at Queen's University now, and currently I have my own company, RHM Training, where I have just finished designing leadership masterclass on employee empowerment, and I want to develop leaders to achieve and create a culture of employee empowerment in the organization, and I want them to not to feel afraid in any of these areas, because I think a lot of leaders are actually working in the dark. They don't really know what employee empowerment is, how to start, where to end, what are the models available. And so these things I can help people to who are interested in employee empowerment to achieve this. So this is now one of my areas. I do lectures and I also do training in these areas.
Perfect, thank you. So again, we have just a few questions, but I'll send everything through to you, Dr. Rozana. There's just a question about the PowerPoint, but yes, we can. I'll be sending through the presentation shortly to those who wish to receive it. That's not a problem. So unless there's any more questions, then I don't know if there's one last thing that you'd like to say. Otherwise, we can close the session.
Okay, thank you. Well, just I want to end up by saying that psychological empowerment is quite a new area at the moment, but it has been around for a long time in psychology, in the forms of self-esteem, self-efficacy, self-control. These have been very important areas of work. If we look at studies like Hawthorne studies, Maslow's framework, they've always been around for a long time. But now we can actually put this in relation to employee empowerment. And in relation to employee empowerment, psychological empowerment at work, feeling a level of self-esteem and self-confidence, and that I am a person, I'm an individual I have my worth. I can give something back to the organization if the organization makes work meaningful for me. And I think this is important now. People are looking for these kind of values. People have been said to me that, organizations have offered me high salaries. I'm not interested in high salary. I am interested in organizations valuing my talent, valuing my work, looking at me as an individual who has certain needs at work, that ability to take decisions, ability to produce, innovative innovation at work. It doesn't always have to be a product. I can innovate in the way we, interact with clients. So it could be a methodology of doing tasks. So these are highly interesting issues. And also organizations who really want to keep their employees in their organization need to look at this, and they will benefit. Thank you. And my last thing to say is I've enjoyed these 3 webinars, and I want to thank EFQM and thank you personally, Sophie, for taking the time and giving me the support, background support, and being so efficient in your emails. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having these webinars with us. It's been a pleasure. We'll just take 2 last questions and then we'll close, because we've had 2 more. So we'll just do these 2 and then we'll close. So the first one is, how do you see psychological empowerment and why do you use How do you see psychological empowerment in relation to emotional intelligence?
Yes, there is, of course, a connection, because self-efficacy, self-esteem, self-control, self-confidence, they are all emotional values. And what psychological empowerment is, and this is a very important question you've asked, because I wanted people to think about this and ask me questions just like something that you have asked. It's to raise this awareness. And I think, don't you think also that psychological empowerment is to do with emotions? It's to do very much with emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence is something that, people, again, worry or be afraid. It is not that kind of thing. We all have emotions, so we need to connect with our emotional intelligence. But the thing with psychological empowerment is it is directly linked with work. If you're not confident at work, you cannot really give your best. So psychological empowerment does have a link with emotional intelligence, but psychological empowerment on its own can stand up on its own right, has these values. Because if organizations don't value people's emotions, then they are going to actually lose out on their talent. Because it is very important. How many organizations even ask these questions? Do we value our people's emotions at work? So this is highly important, and a highly important question that you have asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question from Corrado, who's saying it's more common to say people empowerment, and why do you use then employee empowerment?
Yeah, it's actually the same thing. I mean, people, individual, employee. The reason I use employee empowerment is because empowerment, the word empowerment, is used in different settings. So you have community empowerment, you have people empowerment, you have women's empowerment, you have all kinds of empowerment labeled for different sectors and different people. So to get away from all this, it's very specific, it's very direct. I use employee empowerment, the word employee, because it is business corporate empowerment that I'm talking about. It is to do with employees who are employed at work. So in that sense, it is very important to be very clear. It clarifies that I'm talking about employees at work, so it is employee empowerment, but you can also have people empowerment because employees are people at work, but it is to specify, it is to get away from people empowerment, but who are these people? Are we talking about women? Are we talking about community, people in the community? So to make it specific, to make it focused, to make organizations understand that we're talking about employees at work, employee empowerment. And hence, to make it clear also, I use leader empowerment, because then we're talking about leaders at work. I hope that makes it clear.
Thank you very much. Again, if anything is unclear or you would like further development, please don't hesitate again to send us an email to info@efqm.org and we'll gladly get back to you. Just like to say another thank you to everyone for participating, whether it's in this third one or all three of the webinars. Thank you for your time. And of course, thank you to Dr. Rozana Huq for her time and insight into this interesting subject.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.